we're here to take care of our people, Almighty Father, as you take care of us each day and every moment of our lives. We ask that you be with us and stand beside us and guide us, Almighty Father, through this decision-making process that we have for our people, Almighty Father. Be with all of our people, wherever they may be, and be with our soldiers and sailors and airmen and all of those in harm's way. As we wish that they come home and come home safely, Almighty Father. Be with all of our people as we prepare ourselves at this springtime, as we get ready for the things ahead of us, Almighty Father, but we take this day by day. And so as we begin this day, and this day of work, Almighty Father, be with us. In the name of your Son, Jesus, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Congressman Mason. Please call roll.
Congresswoman Bucklehead. Present. Congresswoman Edwards. Present. Congressman Hamilton.
Present.
Congressman Yett.
Present.
Congressman Maker.
Here.
Congressman Mason.
Present.
Congressman Norris.
Here.
Congresswoman Pratt. Present. Congressman Shaw.
Here.
Congressman Supernall.
Here.
Congressman Walker.
Here.
Speaker Whitehorn.
Here.
Assistant Chief Redcorn.
Present.
We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is the legislative message by Speaker, that would be me. Good morning, members of Congress, Chief Sandy Bear and your staff, glad you're here, and to the Osage constituents who are in the audience and listening. I appreciated your address to the nation. It made a lot of sense to me. We do need to be working together. But the legislative priorities for this session is to work together and to follow our processes that we need to go through to move our legislation through to get to the end. Currently, there are 23 pieces of legislation that are filed on the tracker that will be distributed to committees. And we need to keep it moving along and get it in and out. There will be more introduced. I conferred with the clerk to see what we could expect to have as total during this session. And it is kind of the trend for the past few hunkah sessions that legislation from 23 could possibly double. So this will be a busy session. We don't have the general appropriation bills, but we have modifications to them this session. I'm glad that the chief brought all of the budgeting to the forefront of his message to Congress. This body appropriates every dollar of revenue that the nation brings in. And we need to do it with care, and we need to do it with focus. It's been my experience being on this body that neither the executive nor this body has taken a holistic approach to budgeting. We have not been very good at projecting out a 3-year plan or a budget. I hope with the chief's message that we heard today that we can start a dialogue and we can raise the awareness that we need to do that as a body. We are tapped out. We have general appropriations we have to fulfill for this nation every year. We have direct service budgets that our constituents get. And I'm proud and I'm happy that we can serve our people in that way. And we also have the burial fund, and then we have capital initiatives, the building, the improving that we want to do to grow and to accommodate our government here on the Hill. But we serve all people. We serve the small percentage that is still here within our tribal boundaries, and we serve the people that live from coast to coast and in other countries. So I hope this session we can start that dialogue about looking at where we are, what we have right now as the chief brought awareness to us, and looking where we're going to be in 3 years from now. The economy right now in Osage County, with the shutdown of our oil fields is not stable. The revenue that we spend to serve the Osage people is dependent on gaining revenue. That's all we have right now. And when people that are in this local economy don't have the money to gain, we're going to feel it here at this nation. And so we need to be looking forward to what we can expect, where we can limit ourselves. Because I do believe that that's going to happen. I'm interested in listening to the chief's whole approach to this reorganization he's wanting to send our divisions and departments through the nation. I do want to raise the awareness in this body that the chief sent us an email that I hope that you all have read, because the modifications requested in these division budgets are dependent on each other. We're going to have a whole view of how we're going to move this legislation forward. I'm not going to get real complicated, but it has to work together, or we might have mistakes that we're going to have to come back in and fix. So it's important, excuse me, that every member take part in learning how this is going to intermesh with each other. During the session, we usually hear from our nation's enterprises, Osage LLC, ONES LLC, for their annual plan. These meetings are commonly held in Commerce and Economic Development Committee meetings. They're important. There are changes on the table to be had for these, and it's important because, as we've mentioned, it all goes back to the budget. That's what we do. We appropriate the funds, and we need to have more economic drivers than gaming. We haven't been very successful in doing that as a tribe so far. So I'd appreciate that Congress would take part in listening to these enterprises as they come in with their reports. During the session, we are going to visit 14 board appointments, which will be in various committees. I believe we have some in cultural, governmental operations, commerce. And Congress has put in a process now. This will probably be the second session we've used this process to help us better look at the appointees of the chief before we sit at the table and consider confirmation for them. So that's going to be going on this session. It'll be very busy. We're going to have a new turnover. Some of them are currently interim appointments, and few are new appointments that we never have seen before. So I hope that you take part in these confirmation committee meetings. They're important for our nation. Also, just recently, we've had an appointment from the chief's office for a new attorney general. I believe she's sitting in the audience right now, Ms. Holly Wells. She is the chief's appointment to fill that important role at our nation. Currently, though, with our new process we have not considered a questionnaire that's appropriate for an attorney general. So there is an emergency rules meeting this afternoon at 1 o'clock where the Rules Committee will review the questionnaire, formulate the questionnaire to present to us tomorrow to be able to vote on as part of our rules. Through this new confirmation process we have time frames that are specific in there. So it's important that we expedite this committee process and get the questionnaire to Ms. Wells as soon as we can for this session's confirmation or consideration of confirmation. And finally, in closing this session, we will have election of officers for our body. It's the time that we switch our committees around, we sign up for the interests, what our interests are in committees, whether it be commerce or rules and ethics, congressional affairs, health and social services. We're going to regroup at the end of this session and choose new committees and new officers for Congress. So that's all I have for us today. I'm very encouraged about session. As I was driving in, I enjoyed looking at the spring, and it's kind of refreshing, and I'm eager to get to work. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is reports of select committees. I don't believe that we have any reports for this meeting. And item number 6 would be reports of standing committees. Congressman Yak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of Congress. Appropriations Committee met on March 27th regarding the FY 2015 projected revenue. The committee recommendation was the Appropriations Committee reports to the Osage Nation revised fiscal year 2015 projected revenue of $80,969,186, comprised of unearned revenue within the permanent fund of $30,899,802, and projected earned revenue of $50,069,385. Of these funds available for appropriations in fiscal year 2015, $30,899,802 is restricted to spending on direct services. $5 million is restricted to the purpose of master campus plan debt retirement, and $1 million to the real property fund. Voting yes were Yek, Supernaw, Hamilton, Maker, and Shaw. Voting no.
Thank you, Congressman. Congresswoman Edwards.
I'm here to ask a few questions regarding the report.
I think that would be acceptable right now, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did the projection go up or down, and by how much?
The projection went up by $6 million. I think, yeah, $6 million. That was the additional funds approved in the plan of operations, which Congress approved by resolution. And in that resolution, we stated the purpose of that $6 million, and that was that $5 million was for the campus master plan debt retirement, $1 million for real property.
So that money is restricted, so not available in terms of our general appropriation spending.
It was recommended in the resolution that money be restricted.
Okay.
And that's what we had some.
Congress hasn't appropriated that money
No, we have not
to be
appropriated.
restricted.
Correct.
Okay.
We recommend that it still be used for those purposes because that's what was stated in the resolution. But that will be up to this body to determine.
And then the next question I have is, did the committee determine where we are, or are we going to get some reports on where we are on spending for this fiscal year?
We did not receive any reports on where we're at with spending. They did clarify that they are budgeting at I believe it was 94% rather than the 100% of the appropriation. So with that 94% budgeting, we had a surplus of about $800,000. I don't have the report in front of me right now. And we were still waiting for a carryover number for 2014. They said that would probably be at the end of April before they had that number.
Okay, so will you all be meeting over the course of our session and giving us updates on our financial picture?
We will.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate that. We need to adopt that. I'd consider a motion to adopt the appropriations chair's projected revenue revision.
So moved.
Second. I have a second by Congresswoman Beth Lowhead. Any questions, discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is introduction of bills and resolutions. Are there any bills or resolutions to be introduced? Seeing none. Oh, Congressman Norris.
Good morning, Madam Speaker, members of Congress. I want to read in a resolution 15-10 to request the Osage Nation Executive Branch to establish a registry for the voluntary identification and registration of Osage veterans.
Thank you, Congressman Norris. Any more introductions of bills or resolutions? Then we're on agenda item number 8, bills and resolutions on first reading. Congressman Supernall.
I'd like to read in ONCA 1510, an act to establish the Freeman Monument Fund as a revolving fund, to authorize and appropriate $10,000 to the Freeman Monument Fund and to establish an alternate effective date.
ONCA 1510 will be referred to Appropriations Committee. Congressman Norris. Thank you, Congressman Supernall.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to read in ONCA 15-21, an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 26, the Osage Nation Revenue and Taxation Act, to allow for 100% disabled veterans to receive a sales tax exemption and lodging tax exemption, and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you, Congressman. ONCA 1521 is referred to Governmental Operations Committee. I'm reading in ONCA 1521, an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 26 of the Osage Nation Revenue and Taxation Act to allow 100%, I'll start over. I was reading Congressman Norris. ONCA 1522, an act to amend 26 ONC Section 2-114 of the Osage Nation Revenue and Taxation Act to allow a larger percentage of the state tax rebate collected by the nation to be returned to licensed wholesalers on behalf of the retailers or to the retailer directly, to set a termination date of the fund, and to establish an alternate effective date. I also would like to read in ONCA 1523, an act to amend and restate the law governing special sessions of the Osage Nation Congress, 15 ONC Section 1-102 through Section 1-105, to define national emergency, to require legislation to be filed and listed by number on the proclamation, and to establish an alternate effective date. ONCA 1522 and 1523 both will be referred to Governmental Operations. Congressman Supernall.
Reading in ONCA 15-24, an act to authorize and appropriate $945,000 to the Capital Asset and Improvement Purchase Fund for purchase of real property in Skypit and establish an alternate effective date.
Please continue, Congressman.
Also, ONCA 1525, an act to amend the Osage Nation Gaming Reform Act of 2007 as amended at 14 ONC Section 12-105E to prohibit certain elected officials from being excluded from executive sessions and to establish an alternate effective date. Also,
yes, please.
ONCA 1526, an act to establish a revolving fund for donations made to the Osage Nation, to authorize and appropriate donation funds for the purpose specified by the donor, and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you. ONCA 1524 and ONCA 1525 are referred to Commerce and Economic Development Committee. ONCA 1526 is referred to Appropriations. Congresswoman Edwards.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
ONCA 1527 is an act to amend ONCA 1447, the Executive Branch Division Act, to remove language specific to the division leaders. This is a bill that is part of the reorganization, so it's for our consideration whether we want to remove that language about division leaders in law. It's my understanding that the chief believes that we have too big, too burgeoning of a bureaucracy, and that taking out some of these layers would help us be a more lean, mean fighting machine. So I hope everybody works together to figure out whether that's the case. So I'm putting it out there as the sponsor of that bill, and we will be presenting that. ONCA 1528 is an act to amend 16 ONC 3105 of the Health Benefit Act to change the benefit balance carryover to 2 years and to establish an alternate effective date. This is a bill that I believe revisits what we heard in spring of last year, where we voted to have a carryover. I think that based on what we talked about, that the bill reflected something different than what was intended by Congress. I went back and listened to the tapes, and based on all the discussion I heard us have, it was that we were going to have a carryover of the balance of the year that was ongoing. So if you had a balance in a given year, you could carry that over as well as the next year. By the time the bill was written and passed, it looks like we approved a 3-year carryover. So I want us to go back and visit that, look at numbers that tell us what would happen if we do A, if we leave it the way it is, what the numbers are, and then if we do it the way that I think we agreed we were going to do it. But we'll revisit it and we'll get all the information together and see if we need to change that. So that's the purpose of that bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. ONCA 1527 is referred to Governmental Operations. ONCA 1528 is referred to Health and Social Services. Congressman Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of Congress. I wish to read in ONCA 1529, an act to amend the Open Meetings Act at 15 ONC at Sec 7-105, which is to require agendas to state business to be conducted with specificity and limit any action not on the agenda, and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you, Congressman. ONCA 1529 is referred to Governmental Operations. Congressman Maker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of Congress, Chief and staff. Reading in ONCA 15-30, an act to prohibit the taking of eagles within the jurisdiction of the Osage Nation and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you, Congressman. ONCA 1530 is referred to the Cultural Committee. Congressman Walker.
Good morning, Speaker, members of Congress. Reading in ONCA 1531, it's an act to amend 6 ONC Section 5-140 to impose a mandatory civil banishment of 5 years upon conviction for the sale, distribution, or manufacture of dangerous drugs, and to establish an alternate effective date. Briefly, this was previously sponsored by now Assistant Chief Redcorn, passed by this body unanimously, or the previous Congress unanimously, and was vetoed by Chief Big Horse. Next, I continue.
Yes, please do.
Next, I'm reading in ONCA 1532, an act to establish leasing procedures for business, economic development, and public purposes on Osage Nation restricted and trust lands is authorized by helping expedite and advance Responsible Tribal Home Ownership Act of 2012, Public Law 112-151, July 20th, 2012, codified as 25 United States Code Section 415, H, known as the Hearth Act.
Please continue. Thank you.
Next, reading in ONCA 15-33, an act to authorize and enable the creation of a village as political subdivisions of the Osage Nation and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you, Congressman. ONCA 1531 is referred to governmental operation. ONCA 1532 is referred to commerce and economic development. ONCA 1533 is referred to governmental operations. I'm reading in ONCR 1504, a resolution to provide for an election to amend Article 4, Section 3G of the Constitution of the Osage Nation. This constitutional amendment will remove the static, punitive language in our Constitution that keeps us at 1 year at $5,000. And the language that will replace it will state whatever federal law allows, which will be in step with the 2010 Tribal Law and Order Act. By doing so, we'll be able to enhance the penal judgments of our courts, and we'll also be able to implement the VAWA Act. Until our constitutional language is compliant with the Tribal Law and Order Act, we will not be able to do that. Tribal courts, as of March 7th this year, were all able, anybody that was ready and had all of their code and everything in line, were able to assert jurisdiction over non-tribal members on their lands that had crimes against women for abuse. We can't even enter into looking at this until we get this constitutional amendment passed. This has been presented to Congress before, first by Assistant Principal Chief Redcorn, I believe. I presented it a little over a year ago, and it failed by 1 vote. So I'm hoping that you guys will realize the importance and get this resolution passed. Sorry, I went a little bit overboard there. And I'd also like to read in ONCR 1507, a resolution to authorize and support the implementation of the PAGE program within the Osage Nation Congress for the benefit of Osage Nation youth. And that's pretty self-explanatory. ONCR 1504 is referred to governmental operations. ONCR 1507 is referred to the Education Committee. Congressman Superman.
Reading in ONCR 1508, a resolution to authorize and adopt the Articles of Organization for the Limited Liability Company, Tallgrass Economic Development, LLC, to be formed under the Osage Nation Limited Liability Company Act.
Thank you. Please continue.
Also, ONCR 1509, a resolution to adopt the Articles of Operation for the Limited Liability Company, Tallgrass Economic Development, LLC, to be formed under the Osage Nation Limited Liability Company Act.
Thank you, Congressman. ONCR 1508 and ONCR 1509 are referred to Commerce and Economic Development Committee. We are finished with that portion of the agenda. And we're now on item number 9, motions and notices. Congresswoman Edwards.
Rules and ethics will meet from 1 to 2 today. We are working to approve the questionnaire, which is, that work is charged to Rules and Ethics on the Attorney General. questionnaire, which we hadn't completed in the past because we haven't had an attorney general under this system.
Thank you. I have Congressman Shaw, and then I'll get you, Congressman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to make a motion to request the Osage Nation Congress Legislative Council to provide to the Congress a formal opinion as to whether the $6 million described in ONCR 1416 is restricted to items listed in the title of that resolution or may be used for other appropriations by the Congress.
Motion on the floor, is there a second? Congresswoman Buffalo had seconded. Any discussion? Congresswoman Edwards?
Well, I mean, I don't mind per se, except we know that resolutions are not acts, they're suggestions of Congress, what Congress would like for something to happen. And we also have very clear law that money must be appropriated in order to be spent for a specific purpose. So I'm a little concerned that we might be confusing these concepts. And I mean, I guess we can get verification from our legal counsel, but we should all know that the law says we have to appropriate money in order to spend it. So a resolution asking somebody to send some money our way is not necessarily the way, well, it's not the way we appropriate funds. So if we need further clarification of that, then I'm okay with it. But is there a deadline on when you want that done?
Congressman Shaw?
24 hours, it impacts our appropriations process.
I agree.
Any more discussion? Congressman
Well, I have to
Superman?
agree with Congressman Edwards. I think we, for sure, that we're not restricted by that resolution or the plan of operation of the gaming enterprise. I don't understand the reason for the delay. Know what the answer is.
Congressman Shaw?
I understand Congressman Edwards' remark that we should know, we, members of Congress, should understand our current laws that have been previously passed. But I can tell you, confusion reigns about whether that's restricted or not. It is not clear despite what we should know. This same motion in the Appropriations Committee meeting failed for lack of a second. If that's any indicator of the confusion or misunderstanding about whether that's truly restricted or not. Hence my request for the legal opinion.
Any more discussion to the motion? All in favor of the motion say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Are there any more motions or notices? Seeing none, I would like to go ahead and make a statement here and notices that I have arranged the congressional calendar to not meet officially in session tomorrow, so we can utilize that time to have meetings all day long on this Tuesday and next Tuesday. All other days are subject to meeting in session at 10, so I'd entertain a motion for adjournment to a time certain. Congresswoman Edwards.
Can I have a point of order prior to that motion? In your speech, you made the statement that the Congress was going to approve the form of the questionnaire to the Attorney General appointee.
Yes, I did make that statement.
And if that's the case, then you're not anticipating that Congress would approve that form until Wednesday?
The way the schedule is structured, that would be what would happen, and I did not consider that until you brought the point up. I didn't put the two together. So it will be Wednesday. I did have a conversation with the appointee this morning, and she is going to stay close and local, so we will save some time on possibly not having to post her her documents, that they could be a hand delivery. So I think a Wednesday approval of that questionnaire would be a wash since we have that ability.
Okay.
Okay. Adjourn, is there a motion to adjourn to a time certain? Congresswoman Buffalo, go ahead.
Motion to adjourn until 10 a.m. on Wednesday.
Second.
Second by Congressman Shaw. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed?
No.
Would you let the record state that Congresswoman Edwards is opposed? We're adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday morning.